Hello and welcome to this edition of the Sparx Tribune Report. In this case, perhaps more of a Sparx Tribune rant. I'd like to talk a little bit about optics, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, progressives, and free speech as they pertain to each other. Now, the Republican Party, they enjoy the optics of being able to claim to be the party of liberty, the party of free speech, the party of America, right? America! They are enjoying the optics of looking like the good guys on these subject matters, and I just wanted to suggest that perhaps the Democratic Party is rolling over and playing dead on these issues, on these same issues that we should perhaps be taking the fight to them on. Like with regard to free speech, for instance. Who wins if unmitigated free speech is allowed, whether it be on Twitter, YouTube, comedy, whatever you want to apply it to? Who wins in an unmitigated free speech environment? The best ideas come out in front. They come out ahead. They win the battle, right? May the best ideas win. If you're a progressive and you feel like your ideas are the best ideas, if you feel like your ideas win over bigoted, idiot ideas, then you should be an advocate of a completely free speech environment. Marjorie Taylor Greene is now showing up to Congress with a mask that says free speech, and all the MAGA heads are going, yay, free speech. She's not really pro-free speech like that, and Republicans rarely are, except when it benefits them. You should be an advocate of unmitigated free speech. Why? Because, like Lee Camp has said, like Jimmy Dore continues to say multiple times, and to deaf ears, speaking to a proverbial wall, that the free speech, our First Amendment right, our free speech rights, are not there to protect speech that we all already agree with. That would be stupid to suggest that they are. Our right of free speech is there to protect speech that we might not like, speech that may be unpopular. And sometimes speech that is unpopular is correct. And if those ideas are not allowed in this smorgasbord of ideas, then A, you make a martyr out of the individuals propagating those opinions. For example, deplatforming Donald Trump made Donald Trump into a martyr in the eyes of all the red hat wearing MAGA heads. Now he's a martyr. Marjorie Taylor Greene being removed from office, like many have called for, remove her from office. Well, you've made her a martyr, and in the face of the electorate that duly elected her. And you're making people like Josh Hawley look like fucking heroes now, because he's saying she was elected. He's a fucking Republican is pointing this out. Good job, Democrats. Good job, progressives, who's sometimes even worse on matters like this. You're making Josh Hawley look like the good guy. Because in an unmitigated free speech environment, Josh Hawley's rhetoric can be dismantled. His logic in most of these situations, particularly when he's talking about election fraud, they can be dismantled. And we can, in a court of opinion, a court of public opinion, hash the ideas out there and say, oh, you thought that was voter fraud. To the extent, by the way, that can overturn an election where Joe Biden won by millions of votes in the popular vote, and even by Donald Trump's own record of what it means to have a landslide victory, by Donald Trump's own record, Joe Biden won in a landslide. Donald Trump had a narrower electoral college victory in 2016, and he claimed that he had a mandate to govern because of his landslide victory, showing map after map of the Electoral College win, grinning his big stupid face off, and claiming to have a mandate to govern. Well, Joe Biden won by a larger landslide, if you want to call it that, certainly larger than Donald Trump's nominal landslide victory. So allow Josh Hawley to just keep talking. He's making himself look like a fool unless you make Josh Hawley a fucking martyr. Then you become the fool. It only magnifies those new martyr voices by deplatforming them. So, and on matters of freedom, like when you point out systemic issues that cripple freedom for so many, and how it cripples freedom for so many, to be so crippled by, let's say, a small economic disadvantage, a downturn, a car crash, a health problem can bankrupt someone, and is that really living a free life? And adopt back that terminology of liberty and freedom and everything from the Republican Party, waving their jingoist flags and screaming about freedom while screwing over the people that are cheering for them on the basis of said freedom. You're making the Republican Party martyrs, and you're magnifying their ability to be a harbinger of these terms that they know nothing about. When the Republican Party is the party of the United States Constitution, everything they don't like, it's unconstitutional. Well, you're allowing them to do that when you roll over and play dead and stay silent on what does the U.S. Constitution really say? What does it really say? When Ted Cruz, for instance, goes on a Second Amendment rant, and he's talking about the right to bear arms, as though that means every deranged psychopath over the age of 18 ought to be just handed an AK-47, like just unmitigated, uncontrolled right to walk around with lethal firearms. Take him on that, because he's screaming about the Constitution. So I suggest we scream about the Constitution. Quote it to him. Ask this constitutional lawyer, which is what Ted Cruz has been for decades. He claims to be a specialist on this matter. Ask him to quote the Second Amendment. And as soon as he opens his mouth and says, a well-regulated militia, shut up, Ted, shut up. You just said what? A well-regulated? Let's talk about this. We're going to well-regulate this militia. Now, some people like to go on a different road. Some people like to go on a completely different route and say, well, we have militias, and militia is this certain gatekept group of people. No. Then you're being incorrect, because George Washington himself said he defined militia as being the yeomanry of America from 18 to 80. He's talking about all grown adults. The yeomanry of America was the voting bloc. Back then, the voting bloc of America consisted of white males, but nonetheless, the term yeomanry stands as a justification for who the Second Amendment applies to, in a general sense, a definitive sense of how the Second Amendment should be interpreted. So we are all the proverbial militia in this Second Amendment debate. The best route to go is to say, no, it says a well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state. So right then, don't ban any assault weapons. You're going to give more fuel to the right-wing fire. Mandate background checks. And in the basis of the Constitution, and you scream about the Constitution just as loud as Ted Cruz's big mouth is. You know, on all of these matters, where they turn fluffy, meaningless rhetoric into hard policy and push it using this fluffy rhetoric, the surveillance state. Now, how free is a heavily surveilled nation living under a police state with no free speech? How free, how much liberty do we have? Take back the word liberty. So, no, hold on. Republicans in Congress, and Democrats, by the way, since we're talking about those two things, the police state and the security state, and specifically the security state, Edward Snowden, thank you, good sir. Fucking hero. Free Edward Snowden and free Julian Assange while I'm on that little tirade. But at any rate, if they want to scream about liberty, how about have progressives, even more specifically than just saying Democrats, because more than half of Democrats are just weasels anyway. They're not fighting for any damn thing. But progressives specifically take back this constitutional, this freedom rhetoric, this liberty rhetoric, and take it back from the jingoist interpretation being given to it by corporate Democrats and right-wing Republicans. Take it back and show them who really is fighting for liberty and justice for all. You're letting the Republicans take control of the narrative, and I'm getting a little tired of it. You're making these you're making them martyrs, and you're making them look like the good guy, and then being silent on matters where you have a voice and you can stand up and fight back on these same matters. They want to quote the Constitution. Quote it back to them. Do you know the Constitution? Probably not. You people don't read. You people don't fucking read. At any rate, I'm going to end it right there before the rant just ends up drawing out. But basically, that's what I wanted to say. Let's talk about the fucking Constitution. Liberty and justice for all and freedom and things. And one more thing, let me just add religious liberty onto that, because Republicans in Congress, and this is specifically Republicans on this particular talking point, love to point to that clause in the First Amendment referring to the freedom of religion, but they only do it in a context that screws with other people's freedoms. Completely ignoring the fact that your liberties stop where someone else's begins. You do not have the liberty to infringe on someone else's liberty. So when they start talking about religious liberty, let's bring up religious liberty and let's quote the First Amendment back to them and tell them, no, there is no, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. There is no established religion. So yes, Christians, you have the right to do anything you want to. Gather in your prayer circles and preach on the street corners even, because that is also combined with your free speech rights to do so. Have all the televangelists in the world sucking all the money out of everybody they want to dupe and fool in the process, outside of what is illegal, of course. But then again, turn it around on its head and say, now, these Muslims have the same fucking rights. Buddhists have the same fucking rights. Everyone of every religion has the same rights that you Christians are claiming, and your rights stop where their rights begin. There is no established religion, and that is particularly the clause in the debate. When you quote the Constitution back at them, show Republicans what the Constitution means instead of just remaining silent on the Constitution, because the voters of America are listening. And you're giving the Republicans all the best optics. They get to quote the Constitution and put this fluffy terminology through a jingoist mindset, a jingoist perspective, and a very nationalist and semi-fascist context, even on many occasions. And now, well, not anymore, but many are still against gay people getting married or transgender rights because their religion is against it. Arguably, I mean, some Christians would say, no, my religion is no such thing, and they're the extremists, and okay, I'll respect that, But then again, there are many quoting the Bible and saying that because their fucking book says that I can't love who I want to love or be who I want to be, that their freedom of religion means I can't do X, Y, or Z. Quote the Constitution back at them and quit letting them be the flowery patriots that they're pretending to be. They're criminals, they're corrupt cowards, and they're just big mouths. And you remaining silent is almost telling. What is the motive for remaining silent when you have every advantage? Is it because the Democrats in Congress have nothing they're standing on? To quote Joe Biden, who plagiarized the English politician who said, it's because they have no platform on which to stand. Joe Biden quoted that and claimed it was his. Anyhow, but it's true. They have no platform on which to stand. So they're not fighting for anything. So they let Republicans take over these talking points. Don't do it. Stop it. Progressives, quote the Constitution back at them. As a matter of fact, when we're talking about, I mentioned a moment ago, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, quote to them the Fourth Amendment. The surveillance state is unconstitutional. No, in a real way, it is. You have the right to your persons, papers, houses, and effects, and that means your right to privacy. And if there's a camera on every streetlight, if there's drones flying around our skies, if there's a camera on the corner of every government building spying on us from every goddamned angle, everywhere we go, in every storefront, inside and outside the store, we're all under surveillance 24/7, then that is an abridgment of our Fourth Amendment rights. Lawyers in court violate the Fifth Amendment left and right through weaselly means. It's a bit ridiculous letting Republicans get away with this, and stop it. Specifically progressives, not just Democrats writ large. They're not fighting for anything, but progressives. Start talking about the Constitution. Quit letting Republicans get away with this stupid nonsense. Again, this has been the Sparx Tribune Report. I'll include a link in the description box below to where you can find me on Twitter and to the Sparx Tribune's own website. You have a nice day.